Well, why don't you just tell us a little bit about your business right now, and then we'll talk about how it was in the 1900s. Okay?
And this is when we had the first fair in October of 1891, Greenville's first fair.
Was it a county fair or Greene County Fair?
And all the people who gave prizes and what they had, and there's a few of them get some $5 gold pieces.
Oh, gracious.
Yes.
Well, they'd be something today, wouldn't they?
Wouldn't it? Let's see, I think maybe.
Well, this Brown Manufacturing.
That is what is now turned into American Calendar Company. They started on the corner where the federal courthouse is now.
Oh, where the old post office was.
That's where they started.
Oh, really?
Then they moved down where they're at now.
Well, now, what'd they do, Brown Manufacturing?
Well, that's where the Raymond pills and
Patent medicines.
It was what was originally Porch Pill Company. And Porch Pill Company was over on the corner of Main and Church. The red brick building on the corner now where Corner Store moved away from. You'll find Porch Pill Company listed in there, and that's where they were. Then it was later Brown Manufacturing Company. See, it was Spencer and Brown, and Mr. Spencer used to tell us, he said he came down one morning, he found out that it was just Brown, that Spencer was out, and he didn't know how it come about, but there's nobody but Brown. It was
just
Brown
all of a sudden?
Just all overnight, and he didn't know how.
Well, how funny. They hadn't had a falling out or anything? Well, how strange. Well, I think that's what my grandfather was, a salesman, I believe, for the Brown Manufacturing. He sold the patent medicine, how he got to Greenville. Was a salesman for them.
And he used to tell this, Miss Lancter did, if somebody bought maybe a dozen of the Raymond Lewis bill, that was the order, but he thought, well, they needed more, and he'd write up an order for 2 dozen. And when the man, he'd come back the next time, the man said, you know, I didn't order but a dozen, and you sent 2 dozen, but they're all gone.
Yeah, that was, I see this Porch Pill Company. Yeah. Well, it was really a thriving community, a business community down here during the early...
Yes, it was. I made this statement to a fellow the other day that 40 years ago, you couldn't walk down Depot Street on the sidewalk on Saturday. Everybody was in town.
Saturday used to be the biggest day of the week. Trade day, wasn't it?
Trade day. That was the big day. They were all here. But the pictures changed.
Well, yeah, it surely has. Banks closing and things like that, I think, stopped a lot of that Saturday trade, didn't it?
Definitely. Like, another thing, everybody, with all the people working at the plants, getting off early in the afternoon, they do a lot of shopping at the building.
Through the whole week.
Right.
Well, has your Jenkins Shoe Shop always been in this building?
No, I thought I had a picture in here.
You used to be at the other end, didn't you?
Yes, but we started down across the alley here where the tannery is. And that building burned in 1902. They built that brick building back in 1904. And we went over where the Banner warehouse was. And that's where the George Lane building was. And we had to move from there in 1929, so they built those buildings for Woolworths and Penny's to come in. Then we moved across the street right by the Banner Mill building and stayed there until 59. And we had to move from there because they was going to build for Penny's. And we came back over here. And Dad said, well, we're getting pretty close to where we started.
Yeah, almost back home.
Almost back home.
An hour's distance. Well, you all did harnesses and...
Oh, yes. We made everything for the horse. Collars.
Made it from scratch here.
Finish. We made everything.
Well, aren't you still one of the few people in the area that
Yes.
has things?
Very few people do. We have a lot of people. In fact, I had a man Saturday that came from over near Marshall. He's been coming here for at least the last 45 years. And he came in and he said, well, I got to repair my harness just a little, and I knew you'd have some copper rivets for me to repair them with. Said nobody else would. I said, yes, I do. But he still keeps horses to farm with. He said, my land is not suitable for tractor farming.
So many of those mountain farms aren't.
But he's a World War I veteran. He had this shoulder just practically shot out, and he wears a steel plate on either side. Then this knee was all messed up, and they got a plate in there that he's never let keep him from working. Got several hundred acres of mountain land. Part of it he bought, part of it he inherited.
Staying right where he was.
Right where it is. I have a saddle that my father made in the year 1908 for Miss Charlotte Levitt, a lady's side saddle. She passed away in 1939, and a year or two later he came in one day and wanted to know if I'd like to have that saddle. And I said, yes, I would. You just bring it in and tell me how much you want for it. A few days later he brought it, and I said, how much? And he said, well, we talked about that when I came back. He said, I want silver from heels on these shoes. So he came back later in the day to get his shoes. And how much for the shoes? I said, well, wait a minute, how much for the saddle? He said, nothing. He said, I want to give you that because your dad made it. But I don't want you to sell it. I want you to keep it in the shop because your father made it. Now he said, how much for the shoes? I said, nothing. And I told my wife, I said, if he'd have said I want $50 or $75 or even $100, I'd had to write a check right quick before he had time to back out because I really wanted that saddle. Then up front, I had the saddlebags for Jim Ducker, who was a cattleman. And he traveled all over North and South Carolina, Little Kentucky and Virginia, buying and selling cattle. And in those days, you didn't pay by check because most people didn't want it. Most of them didn't want paper money, they wanted gold. And the gold that had been in those saddlebags, at today's price of gold coins, I could buy both bags, not just one, both of them. See? And Mr. Duggar passed away in the early 40s, and I was lucky to get the saddlebags of his estate. And his wife wanted to have them. And then she had one particular chair in her home that she wanted my wife to have. So I got two things out of it. And I also have a pair of leather leggings my father made for Rex Jeffers' grandfather, who was a doctor. Got them.
The leggings.
The leather leggings. The tall ones that come up over the knee.
Oh, really? Came up over the knee.
So I've got a whole bunch of stuff that when we'll go into the museum. Yeah.
The Nathaniel Green. Well, that's wonderful.
And grandfather's shoe bench and all his too. And a lot of this stuff that I've picked up through the years, different things, I want that all to go into the museum. In fact, I've got that in my will, and Hugh understands it. And
Well, that's wonderful, because that's something that people just don't see anymore.
I have a pair of ice stones up there at Mr. Hayes' home. Our Judge Sunhope's father made for me in the year 1925.
Ice stone,
Ice stone.
that's when you had the big blocks of ice.
That's right. Not only that, but I've got his grandfather's hammer, carpenter hammer. See, his grandfather was a noted carpenter. He's the fellow who built the Earl Snap home.
Oh, really?
Built the Jeffrey Mortuary House for Pat Reeves. Built all that.
He was quite a builder then.
He was not only a builder, but he was an architect on the way back. I've been told this by different people who knew. He cut all this fancy stuff, the little round deals up on top.
Mm-hmm.
He sawed that on the ground, and people they didn't have to send any of it back because it didn't fit. When he
Gosh.
it fit.
And he'd send it on up and
Send
it fit
when it fit.
Mm.
You'd have a hard time finding somebody
You
who
couldn't do that in time. Well, you've seen a lot of changes in the
Yes, a lot.
business life of Greenville, haven't you?
I was telling Hugh Wells not too long back about the old colored fellow Briscoe who had a restaurant and a little store in what is now this end of Green County Bank where Hugh Wells' office is.
Mm-hmm.
He was black as ace of spades, but he was a wonderful cook. And this actually happened. Dinner meal was a quarter, all 25 cents. And some of these boys that brought their cattle in, they said they was going to break Uncle Bill from that 25-cent meal. So 3 of them made it up their mind that they was going in and just keep on eating. So one day they did. They broke down their quarter and paid for it. And they eat what they put out for them, you know. And they kept calling for more, and 2 or 3 times. So finally Uncle Bill said, "Now boys, I'll tell you, I want you to have all you needed, but I'll give you money back if you just get up and leave."
Oh, wow, that's unheard of.
That's right. Then you notice there, J.R. Self, he was right next door to that place. He had the first print shop that I ever knew about. And he was the first, though, that's one of the things that got me intrigued in coins and paper money. He had odd coins and a few odd pieces of paper money. And he had it on display. And as a kid, that thrilled me to death to see it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the things through the years
You collected.
caused me to want to collect.
Yeah, it says here he was books and stationery.
That's right. But he had the first printing outfit, to my knowledge. I mean, you know, this print shop, we had a newspaper.
Mm-hmm.
Democrat's Son started, of course, right on down the street here, you know.
Oh, did it?
You've seen that picture, I think, haven't you?
Mm-hmm.
It started there, but as far as a print shop to do printing for people, his was the first.
Well, I noticed down here there was a marble works.
That was next door here. Mr. Wardell, not Wardell, Wardell did that. Then later, Sam Harburg.
Well, was that like for tombstones?
Wonderful.
Uh-huh.
And I can show you an awful lot of the stones in Oak Grove Cemetery
That were made,
that were made right there.
and they made them, literally made them there, didn't just ship them in from somewhere.
Made with a hand chisel. and they were all marble. So seldom ever seen a granite nail. They were all marble. Because granite was much higher, and then granite was hard to work. You couldn't work it, but it's usually like they do now. Granite, of course, it's a lifetime thing right on. Marble, you can tell the marble, you have to look at that dowdy up there. See how the marble is serrated? Not granite doesn't.
That it stays forever, just like it is. Well, of course, I can see from this that Greenville's always had a lot of attorneys downtown.
A whole bunch of them. Yeah.
Well, they had several millinery shops,
Yes.
and that's a thing of the past.
Have it.
Ladies' hats.
Yeah. Ms. Ryan had one on Main Street, and she lived in the home from the Greenville Hospital that now belongs to Lynn Santel, where his mother lived.
Oh, yeah.
She lived out there.
They had a couple of saloons, too, I see.
Yes, certainly did.
And didn't you have a tea room? Was that butterfly tea room?
That was upstairs over what was later where Coon had his place. He was upstairs there. This Lane, I believe, is the lady, you know.
Well, where was there wasn't there a restaurant, Gus's?
Gus had a restaurant. He first started in a little narrow building that adjoined the Green County Bank. Then he moved down into what is now the alley where the grammar shop used to be. That was his second place. Then, you know, he went out for a while. Then later, he bought the alley that went between the old Banner Mill, and that's where Bingo's is now. He bought that, and that was the highest piece of property he's ever sold in Greenville. It was 11 feet wide, and he paid $1,000 a square foot for it.
God.
$11,000.
Well, was that the Dixie, or was that another restaurant?
Yes, the Dixie was up on Main Street. Right, it's too far back to remember. Where Coon had his place. There was another little alley went down between there and the old First National Bank building. Little alley went down there. And the Dixie was in the building right this side.
The Dixie, the restaurant.
But I'm trying to think of that fellow's name that run that. He was not a Greek. He was
Armenian or someone.
Armenian. Junior worked a little for him on Saturdays and after school when they opened his last year of high school.
In the restaurant.
In the restaurant. I was trying to tell you, I've got a lot of books they were going to throw away up the bank, a whole bunch of Mr. Brabson stuff. I've got 2 files, the year 1902 and 1906, and you would be surprised at the price of groceries in the year 1906 in the government grocery store. It's ridiculous. And in 1906, Dr. Hawkins sent Dr. Brabson a bill for $2. And down in the statement, in very fine print was, we have to pay our bills just the same as you do.
Oh, gracious.
Well, what was some of the groceries listed? Do you remember?
Oh, Brumley had everything that he had then.
But the price.
What was some of the prices? Oh, that's okay. I just thought you might just have remembered something.
Well, it must have been next to nothing if
very
you could buy a
little.
whole plate lunch for 25 cents.
Mm-hmm.
I do remember this. Sugar was a nickel a pound, 5 cents. And our buckle of coffee was 15 cents a pound. I remember those two particular things right off the bat.
Well, now, are you going to leave to the museum too, the papers?
If I have Dr. Bradson's permission. Right now, I don't know.
Yeah.
But if I have his permission, I want to.
Well, I've got the first 3 years of my grandfather's ledgers for Lancasters. And I noticed that in one of them, Britt Reeves' mother and father were getting married, and they received several sterling silver iced teaspoons, and they were $1.25 a piece for a sterling silver iced teaspoon, and they would be, heaven only knows, $15 to $20 to $30 now.
I have a number of places where the Bradsons bought stuff from Lancaster's and charged, and they'd pay ever so often.
Well, they had, I think the store had, I believe it was the first gas tank was out in front of Lancaster's.
That's right. On the edge of the street.
Yeah.
Edge of the sidewalk.
Well, when were the streets paved?
Our first paving was done in 1940.
How much did they pave then? Was it just like Main Street or?
Main Street and then Depot.
Main Street was first. Well, did they do the length of Main Street, or did they just do the business area of Main Street?
If I remember correctly, they paved from McKee Street up to
The sidewalks, were they just board, or?
well, mostly saw the sidewalk where we had one up that way were either brick or concrete. Up until then, we had stepping stones up here across the street.
Or were they limestone?
Limestone, and the greater part of them were 2 feet long and a foot wide. And I've seen the days when it'd been a rain spell like we have now, and they just almost buried. You had to look
To find the
and
stepping.
be sure that you was going to find one to step on. And this particular spot had just a little bitty building on it.
Where we are now.
Where we are now. The width was the same, but the depth was only about 40 feet. And Dr. Ellenberg and the guy who runs Transittville, their grandfather had a little grocery store, just small items. Come in with a nickel and buy a great big bag of candy. And they didn't know that until I told them.
You used to be able to go and buy something for a penny, and you can't.
A lot of things. Pictures changed when they were doing all this wiring, putting all this electrical stuff under the ground a few years back. The head man of sort of made the shop his headquarters about using the telephone, the bathroom. He said one day, he said, I wish somebody would let me know a little something about all this rock that's under here, and I'm afraid I wouldn't have took this job. He said, did nobody know it? I said, well, some of them should have known. He said, did you? I said, sure I did. I said, I seen this street when the rock that you're drilling on now was up here solid. And when the horses and wagon come up, I said, I've seen the horse step on that, and he'd get a misstep, and his foot would slip on the solid rock. He said, well, what about these buildings? I said, yes. The courthouse is built on solid rock. That foundation is down to solid rock. You know, You remember a few years back when a whole bunch of them decided to want to build a new courthouse?
Yeah.
I said, well, you've got a wonderful courthouse. It's built on solid rock. And all you need to do is some remodeling. And then Brown come along and remodeled for about 1/10 of what they wanted to do. And look what we've got, a nice one. And we could have done this jail the same way and added just a little more to it.
The government, federal government.
And we've got the very thing that all our citizens fought against when they had several locations that wanted to build a regional prison, and they fought against it, you know. One out next to Belton and one up near Afton, you know. Then we had the land out next to Green Valley belonged to the state. We could build it.
That's a jail, federal prison.
And the federal man came along and built this, and what have we got? We've got a federal prison.
Yeah. But it has really made a difference along that creek and everything.
Oh, yes.
It certainly has helped that area.
Certainly. And when you get this other thing, if we get it all back in here, see,
Mm-hmm.
it'll be nice.
Be real pretty.
It's going to cost a whole bunch of money. One fellow said, well, the states are going to pay for it. I said, yeah, but we're paying. The taxpayers are the ones who's paying for it.
I don't know where those people think the state gets their money. Do you?
Well, I had one fellow one day, in fact, he works for the state. He said, I'm going to get a raise. The state's paying for it. I said, yeah, and your tax dollar that you pay in is paying your salary.
But he hadn't thought of it that way, had he?
Yeah. But I've watched a lot of things. I watched a lot of ancient history. And America is leading right up to the same thing that Rome did.
Well, you've seen a lot of changes in human nature.
I've seen it in not only in people, but the times and conditions on the way. And unless there's something done before the year 2000, the American people will rise up. Taxation has become subverted. One fellow was telling me the other day, done a little study about all of the retirement people that are on our government. Figure is staggering. Staggering. A judge goes in for a few years at a tremendous salary, and a lot of them retire early, but they get that salary.
Right on.
They live, and they get an increase.
Every
Their
time
cost of living, they get an increase in it. And yet they're coming right back, and the fellow who's making maybe $4,000, $5,000, $6,000 a year, hey, and they're outnumbered.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
No? So that's history.
Mm-hmm.
Ancient history proves it. And if you want to go back to the Old Testament, they had the same problem. Taxation that became subverted. Rebel.
Mm-hmm.
This past week, I've been studying and doing research on the life of Solomon. All the things that he did. And I made this remark to a lady friend of mine the other day. I said, I wonder how in the world he was able to keep everything that 700 wives and 300 concubines wanted. Because each and every one, they had to want something, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But you go on down and slave labor. And if somebody did something that he didn't want done, there was no trial, you just had him executed.
Mm-hmm.
Now one particular fellow, just shortly before David's passing, they thought that he needed a nice young lady as a nurse, that it might be encouraging to him, you know. And so they brought in one. Well, when he passed away, then one of the fellows came to Solomon and said, now, I want her for my... So Solomon promptly has him executed. You mustn't do that.
They didn't have any problem with the jails then.
No. You just executed the guy and got shut up.
Well, I know Mr. Cox was telling me about this old jail over here and how it originally was down, well, I guess it was over near where Matt's office is, or that down at the foot, across from the tailor shop, I believe he said. And it was built of the limestone block. But the original jail was over near the big spring, and it was a log structure that was built over the creek. And that was the toilet. They just used they had slats in the floor of the jail, and they just used the creek to wash away the and then they had the jail that we have now. The limestone from that jail was down. The jail was over the street in front of the tailor shop, and then they moved it up here, block by block, and redid it. And they have the chains and the things down in the bottom, the limestone part of the jail, where they chained them. They had an entirely different form of justice back then.
We worked the prisoners on the road, even in my lifetime. And if there's one that you had any idea he might try to escape, we put the ankle in. And just a few days back, they were taking one from down here up in the courthouse for trial, and they had the ankle chains on him because they was afraid. And not only that, but they had him handcuffed to one officer on either side.
Well, I hope they had it fixed now so they could go straight through and not have to go outside.
They bring him right up the street. And it was heartbreaking. The other day they came up with two beautiful young girls, and both of them handcuffed. Breaks your heart.
Yeah.
And yet, all the statistics show now, and Betty Justice told me this. She said, Miss Jenkins, you'd be surprised at the rate of the girls that have been prosecuted now for criminal acts.
Mm-hmm.
Breaks your heart. What have you come to?
Mm-hmm.
Why?
This is changing the subject, but the rail travel and traffic and transportation used to be a lot different than it is now, didn't it?
Yes, and Sunday's Knoxville paper says there's a possibility that Amtrak may come back, and if it does, it'll be operating through here again.
But we used to have, a couple of passenger trains in the morning and a couple in the afternoon?
We'll start in the morning. We had number 1 going from Bristol to Knoxville, number 2 from Knoxville to Bristol. Then we had 26 about 10 o'clock coming from Memphis all the way to Bristol. We had 41 at noon going west. Then in the afternoon, we had one coming about 5 out of Knoxville, and one coming the other way. Then at 6 o'clock, we had the short trains that operated only between Knoxville and Bristol, one each way. Then we had 17 and 18 that operated at 4 o'clock in the morning, one either way.
So, I mean, really it was a busy...
Yes, indeed. And we had an awful lot of freight trains.
In between that.
In between that. I went back and forth to Memphis, the hospital so much in the year of 38, 39, and 40. And I could get on 25 up here in the afternoon, late, around 5:30, and have supper up Morristown, Jefferson City. I'd go to bed just after we went through Knoxville. Wake up the next morning and left this.
Marvelous travel.
Mm-hmm.
And I went to John Hopkins for several times in 25. Get on 42 up here in the afternoon. I wake up in Morristown the next morning. No.
Delicious meals and everything.
Food was out of this one.
Oh, and the service was marvelous.
I'd like to see it again. I'd like to see it, and the day will come when the highways and the airways are not going to handle all of it. So we got to, they're proving that in foreign countries, especially in France and England, bringing the train.
Well, and their bus service used to be so frequent through here, and down to a couple of trips either way now.
They say now that because everybody's got their car and they want to go do what they want to when they want to. But they've changed quite a bit.
When did you all talking about cars? There weren't lots of cars here early, were there?
No, I think I'm right. The year was 1907 when I had my first automobile ride, and that was with Dale Clark and Bob Duff. And my ride was from the corner of Main and Spencer Street out to where the old town gate is. That was Jim Rushcroft's big white house where Paul Metcalf lives, and that was my first automobile ride. And boy, I was born down. I'd had a car ride. And that was a chain drive affair, solid wheels, solid rubber tires. Didn't have a steering wheel.
It didn't hold one of
Had
those.
a bar.
Well, now that was sort of considered almost out to the country, wasn't it?
Well, it was. I didn't know. Like when we bought this property where we're at now in 1914, we were in the country.
Mm-hmm. We're on the Kingsport Highway.
Now we're in that.
Well, I know even when I married Nat and going out Church Street, before you get to the Edgemont Grocery, that was country. He'd go see some people right out there, and it was out in the country.
Yeah, and I made a remark Sunday. We went over to Parisville to this lady that Bob Hurley wrote about way back there where she lost her husband.
Yeah, her children.
Just before Christmas, about a month, Marilyn Martin and me took some money for 2 or 3 people, went over and gave it to her so that she and the kids could have a good Christmas. And we went back Sunday again, and as we come back, we talked about the fact that in the country now, you can have all the conveniences that you can have in town because you've got electricity, you can have your own water system, and that's why so many people now, a lot of people retire. One of the couple that have retired and went out right a couple miles from where he grew and bought a farm, several acres. He's retired from the telephone system. Got a couple of Tennessee walking horses. But he said, I wanted a place where I could get out and have a little peace and quiet. he said this city life has just about killed.
But of course, city life in Greenville, if he's a Greenvillian, is nothing compared to what it is in the city.
You and Betty said that they're just thrilled to death to be back home.
Well, now, when did you get electricity in your shop?
I guess in 1912. I didn't get electricity in my home until 1925.
Oh, really? And now I bet your electricity here, most of your machines were still foot and hand operated, weren't they? Your electricity was mostly just for lights. And then I guess that was the demise of the ice business.
No. I hate to think. The only reason we hang on now is we need it.
The shoe shop? Well, you absolutely are.
We need it.
Mm-hmm.
Can't make any money anymore. Don't worry about that. So I can live, and that's all they're going to let me do anyway. But we need it.
Mm-hmm.
We need it.
Well, you're the only one around, aren't you?
Well, Bobby Moore got this place up on Main Street. Bobby just works where he wants to. He's got his Social Security and he's got his retirement from the Army. And his wife has got her retirement from the city, from the school department. So
A lot of people would be having to buy new shoes more often if it weren't for you.
well, and we do so much. I would have never realized how many crippled folks there are until they have to live in here.
Mm-hmm.
There's never a week goes by we don't have to build a brace or build up a shoe for a crippled person. We've got a number of them. Come from all around. One fellow from Newport. He has to have a brace built up. Nobody do it. Said I can't get them about no. Can't go to Johnson City with this place is ever.
Be 3 times what. Well, are you getting tired?
Don't get tired. I just keep going. I just keep going. But like Jay Norton always said, we've seen a lot of changes in our town. I'm not sure that all of them have been for that. Somehow. It breaks my heart to see all these empty buildings in the next block. I'd like to see something in those buildings, some sort of business.
Yeah, to have seen it as thriving as it once was,
That's right.
it hurts you
It does. Hurts you.
more than it does us who, really didn't see it that way.
25 years ago, you walk up here at the corner, and there's Waddell and Burt in business. Next door, Boyd Drug Store. And then Captain Theater was going good. The next thing was the hardware store that was W.R. Larry and his outfit. And then, of course, there was Albert Souson's clothing store. Then the next was Russell Sousson Hardware right there on Main Street, F&B Drug Store, and Perky Hardware, and then
Snap. 5 and 10.
5 and snaps 5 and 10. Going out on Al Sanders and their little place of business. And on the corner, of course, there's Kenny Carter and Crawford. Years before, there's the Wheatleys had that corner business, a tremendous wearing apparel for men and ladies, whatever
did
you
they?
needed.
Where Main Street place is now.
Of course, on the other corner, you had every kind of business. Everything was full.
Going down the street like you went up that way. Come on down that street like that and just tell us about what all
On Main Street,
Uh-huh.
well, of course, we had the Mitchell Furniture Store, which was not only a furniture store, but an undertaking establishment, you know.
Where is that? Where?
That's where Snap Printing Company and
The Moss's bit ball.
yes, and that whole business right there. They had two.
An undertaking place was there?
That's right, J.J. Mitchell. See, he was in business before Dowdy Stevens. See, and he sold that out to A.J. Disney, and that was nothing but furniture with Disney. And of course, Sturkey's brought that out and moved down on Depot Street. And they were evidently intending to keep the funeral part of it, but didn't materialize. So that ended that program. And of course, you'll notice A.G. Britton, they had the clothing store. First building this side of where the First National Bank building was.
Mm-hmm.
See, I've got the picture up there of the old First National Bank building, the first one with all the that was Mr. Raxon, Mr. Willis, and Mr. Hacker there. And of course we come on down. The next thing, we had a store right next door to where Langston's is. A man by the name of Round, R-A-M. Back for just a few years. And Langston's was next. Next was Spot Cash Grocery Store.
Spot Cash.
Spot Cash, that was W.O. Bowman, Bill Bowman, the lawyer's grandfather. See? And the next thing I reckon was Isaac O'Hara's outfit. He had a watch shop and a little jewelry outfit. That was later happened to be Pierce Drug Store. And of course that disappeared and the bank got that.
Well, what about from the Greene County Bank down? Let's go down that block and come back up.
Bank, we had the first building where Gus had a place. Then the next thing was a barber shop, and it's listed in this thing here. And that was later operated by Pickering, John Pickering, for a number of years. Then Ms. Ryan first had her place adjoining that, then she moved across on the other side of the street. Then we had the bakery place, right where this first little brick building is, where they got, I believe they got some sort of driving lesson training.
Yeah, the other side of the Presbyterian Church.
Right. We had a very small building in there, and that's where our first library was when I was going to school. We had a small building there for our library. And I think a minute that Madge Wilson as I recall, was first lady that lived in the library.
And that was a bit right beside the Presbyterian Church.
Right beside the Presbyterian Church. And the next thing, of course, was the later years turned out to be the hardware store. Previous to that, on the upper side of what is now down to Stevens, we had another hardware store that belonged to the name of Miller. In part of what is the Down to Stevens building, it rusted. We have the Stevens that were still was also
Their first funeral thing was there.
in that building. The body was always taken home and the body was prepared. We had to home.
Well, now that across the street there from Dowdy Stevens, the building that's still there, was that where that drug company was?
Sports field.
Then what went on up toward the hotel from there?
There was a garage, the first garage that we had was right there. Charlie Clark had it. I'm not sure if her name of Bacon was one of the things we had. Then that later, of course, turned into Chevrolet place, and Gene Easterly had it. Then the Bumister. Then the next thing is a concrete building in there. I'm pretty sure that Mr. Dowdy built that car dry clean. And then we get in.
Well, now it really used to be a thriving business, didn't it? A hotel.
And then Bob Ray started his first grocery store in the lower section of the hotel building.
Where the Morgan room is?
Morgan room is. Then he built part of the building down there to come to church for a while, you know. Then turned the building back over to them, and he went over to
Then what was on up from the hotel?
well, we had several. Anthony Van had a store that's called the Beehive.
Yeah.
That was a clothing store. It's listed in there. That was a men's and ladies' clothing store. And then in later years, W.H. Kaiser come in town from the country, borrowed money, and started a men's store, nothing but men's clothing. The next building was a barber shop. Mr. Eisenhower, they called him Zeke. He had a barber shop in there, and Pat Harrison, Ben Shelton, and Mr. Carey were the barbers. And later years, Ben Shelton also went in there, and Mr. McDaniel. Then that thing moved around over onto Depot Street, not a couple of doors down below where Howard's Jewelry is, and they called it Powell's Barber Shop. Of course, the next thing then was Soda Grill. It moved when Greg Jones and that bunch bought that building. He moved around on Depot Street. Nothing left of the old outfit on that street except Dowdy Stevens.
Yeah, that's about it.
So, then unless some changes made pretty quick, they won't be there too long. We're both sitting there going down fast. go down by Bill and Nancy both are about gone.
Yeah,
That's I believe that's the end.
well, going on down, do you want to go on down Depot Street, go down one side and come back up the other and talk about what used to be there that,
On the beginning, when you get around the corner there on Depot Street, the first thing we had in the basement of the Mason Corner, we had a barber shop. Mr. Bryant had a barber shop there for many years in the basement. And then later, in the later years of 1920s, along about the latter part of 20s, Mr. Cox moved his shoe shop there, and that's where he finished. Mr. Biddle at one time, who was our policeman, he had a little grocery store back when I was just a very small kid. The next thing was W.H. Thompson clothing store, and that building was torn down in 1911 and moved down next to Banner Mill Company, the same building that we later moved into when we had to move from over where the Banner Mill. And Central Drugstore started in the building next there. Howard Tony and Mr. D.M. Cox said that. And Gordon moved his store, which was, he bought the Brumley bookshop on Main Street, and they had to move to the Captain Theater. He moved down on Depot Street. The shoe store was later. That's section also, much later. We went on down and you know where the alley is going back through there, they did have it fenced off.
yeah,
Uncle John Guess, and it's mentioned in there. They had a little restaurant and a rooming house. The rooming house was upstairs, the restaurant downstairs. They were colored.
they were what?
They were colored folks. But there, in fact, the American wife was a slave. She was
Well, was it a rooming house for the colored or just for whites?
The restaurant was for whites. Nobody saw comfortable. Then the next thing was Bruce Williams and Tom Levy's meat market. I guess the next thing then was Jim Maloney's store. That was a clothing machine. Jim Maloney was he was the one who had so many girls. Mrs. Brumley was the daughter. Ms. Dowdy was one of the girls. Miss Pearl Maloney was one of them. Ms. O.C. Armitage was one of them. Then we had another store there. Mr. Neville Hawkins, N.A. Hawkins, had a place where he bought chickens, eggs, rabbits, everything that the farmer had to sell. Walnuts and the walnut kernels. Yeah. That gets you way on down right where Grove C. Bird store was, and that was built. They actually started in 1911, and the building says 1912 when the building was built.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, we had the auditorium on the corner.
Now, what was it used for?
Well, we had traveling shows that came through. Then, when high school, when you graduated from high school, you had to have some place for that.
And you'd have those graduations
We
there.
had up there. And
What was it called?
they called it the auditorium. And a bunch of Mr. Taylor Howard and half a dozen other fellows went together and built it. Didn't belong to the city. It was private. And in 1910, I had my seat for the graduation that night, and every seat was taken. And I still don't know who it was, but some man and his wife came in, and he said, "Oscar, would you sit in the window up there and give me that seat for 50 cents? I said, "I sure would." Down at the window, I went and gave him the seat and put the 50 cents in my pocket.
Oh,
That was 1910. Then, of course, the Smith house was on the corner.
there's a boarding
That
house.
was a boarding house, and a rooming house. Ms. Smith, they operated that for years.